Alright, today I'm going to be doing a little maintenance on the 8.8 rear end in this 1990 Mustang GT. It's going to do a little fluid swap. I'm going to try using a transfer pump. And I think a lot of people just, they'll usually unbolt the rear end cover. So, I don't know, I just want to try doing it with this transfer pump, see how that works out. So if it doesn't work out, then I'll just end up pulling the cover like normal people do. Figured I'd give this a shot. And the other thing is, I don't think I really need the friction modifier, because this stuff is synthetic. And then this is an older bottle. I actually saw a newer bottle of this in the store, and a lot of the newer bottles they'll actually tell you somewhere on the bottle that you do not need a friction modifier. But I've got this stuff, so I think I'm just going to throw it in there. I don't think it's going to hurt anything. So yeah. Got the car up, and I put jack stands underneath the frame rails because I want to be able to manipulate the height of this rear axle assembly with the jack. And of course, you're going to take this wheel off, be sure to break the lug nuts loose before you lift the car up. Make your life a lot easier. So I took the wheel off just so I'd have better access, because the fill plug is on the driver's side of that rear axle. So, alright, try getting that drain plug out. Alright, I got the plug out. The other thing to keep in mind is you definitely want to take the car for maybe like a 5 or 10 mile drive to get that gear oil warmed up. It'll be a lot easier to get it out of there. And the other thing is, if you've never serviced your rear axle before, this plug can be a real pain to get out of there. So you got to be ready to go to war with that thing. So definitely want to have some penetrant lubricant and a 1/2 inch breaker bar. And then I like to use, I got a 1/2 inch to 3/8, because the flip side of this plug, basically it fits a 3/8 drive. So you just put an extension on there. So like I'll use either a 1/2 inch ratchet or that 1/2 inch breaker bar. Like if it's being tough getting off, I'll use that breaker bar, put the 1/2 inch to 3/8 adapter, and then put a short enough. You don't need a really long extension, but you're gonna need a 3/8 drive extension. And then depending on how bad it is, like that's why I take this wheel off. Sometimes you need the access to get in there and get some leverage on it. So I'll try to get a shot of the drain hole. So it's on the driver's side towards the top. The other thing I like to check out, on the passenger side here, you got this vent. You want to make sure that that thing it's moving. So this is good. See how it's bouncing up and down? That way you know your rear axle's getting proper ventilation. If that thing's stuck, you can just kind of shoot it up with some penetrant lubricant, and then take a metal head hammer and just being real gently, just tap on it. It'll usually bust it loose. Alright, got the pump going. If I can get a shot of this, it'll be interesting. got her all drained out with that pump. I actually measured what came out of there using an old quart container of engine oil. I got 2 quarts out of there, so pretty much got everything out of there. I was kind of wondering if the tube would get all the way into the bottom or not, but it looks like it did. So pretty much got it all out of there. That was good. So I just took one of the tubes from that pump. I got it running into that fill hole there. So I put the limited slip additive in first, and then put the 2 quarts in, you know, just plug them into the hose and squeeze the stuff in there. So then it takes about 2 quarts, and then if there's basically you want to make sure the rear axle is just kind of, I just kind of go off the rear cover, make sure it's sitting vertical, and then if you put too much in there, any excess oil will come dripping out of the fill plug. So, you know, the proper level for the rear axle fluid, with the axle sitting level, you take that fill plug out, and if you can put your pinky in there and just feel some oil, you've got enough in there. And if there's not enough, you got to fill it up. So, like if you're going to top it off, you just kind of keep pumping fluid in there until it comes out of the drain plug, and then just let it drip so that it gets to an even level with that fill plug, and then you're ready to put the plug back in. So I got it filled up, and the last thing I'm gonna do, this plug is magnetic. Kind of see it's got a little bit of poop on it, so I'm gonna clean that plug off and get that plug back in there. Alright, I put the wheel back on there, just got it snugged up with a wrench. I'll go over how to properly torque this wheel. But I got the wheel on there, snugged it up, started up the car, put it in first gear, and I'm just letting it run with, it's just sitting in first gear. So that's going to allow the oil to mix around in there. Probably really don't have to do this, but I don't know, seems like kind of a good idea. You know, get that oil splashed around without any kind of load on the axles or anything. So probably gonna let it run like this for a couple minutes, and then I'll go over how to properly tighten down these wheels. That's the towel I used to clean off that fill plug. Definitely had some poop on there. Alright, so whenever you're mounting up a wheel, you know, it's one of those things that a lot of people get wrong, and I don't know, it's like, it really irks me because I've worked at a lot of shops where guys just zip lug nuts on with an impact gun, and it's really not the right way to do it. You know, the wheel studs are basically designed to have a spring ability to them. So if you zip these lug nuts on with some high power impact tool, there's a good chance you're going to overstretch that wheel stud. And once you do that, that stud is not going to give you the proper spring loading that it should have. So it's like once it gets stretched, it's permanently stretched. And it's not going to pull that wheel onto the hub the way it's supposed to. So what you really want to do, like I've got the back ends down on the ground, but I do not have the full weight of the vehicle on this tire right now. So what you want to do is lower the vehicle so that the tire's touching the ground, but you can't rotate it. So this way you don't have the full weight of the vehicle resting on that tire, and it's not transferring the full weight onto the axles. So that's going to allow that wheel to properly pull onto the hub. It's not going to be fighting all that force. Like if I just put the car on the ground and I try tightening those lugs, you're trying to pull that wheel onto the studs or onto that hub with all the weight of the car on it. So like I said, lower the vehicle, get it on the ground to where that tire is just touching the ground, and then when you go to torque it, if the wheel starts spinning, you can let it down just a little bit more, get a little more weight on there. But you want just enough to keep the tire from spinning while you're torquing it. So the other thing I like to do, like I usually torque mine to, I think the actual spec's about 95 to 100, so I'll usually go about 90, 95. But I like to do it in increments, so I'll probably do like 3 different increments. So I usually start around 40, and you want to do a cross pattern. You can see the wheels moving, so I gotta let it down just a little more. Alright, so I did all 4 at 45. So now I'm gonna set the torque wrench to about 75. I'll lower it a little bit more because that tire was moving again. Alright, so now I'm setting it to the final torque setting. Now, like if I had all 4 of the wheels off, I would set this to 45. I do these, I go over to the passenger side, do all 4 of those lugs, then I would change it to 75, do that passenger side at 75, come back here, do this at 75, kind of leapfrog back and forth because that way you don't have to reset the torque wrench a bunch of times. Alright, so the final setting, bump this up to 95. So when I'm done doing that cross pattern, I'm going to do a final circle. Alright, so now I'm ready to put the full weight of the vehicle down. I'm ready to completely lower this. So like I was saying, if you had all the tires off, you know, just kind of go back and forth from passenger to driver side, and then like if I had the front tires off, I'd do the same thing. You know, next up, I would fully lower this. Then I come to the front, put my wheel chocks back here, and then same thing, just get the front low enough to where the tires won't rotate, and go ahead and torque them up. Now the other thing to keep in mind too, like, especially if you're a corner burner and you're taking hard corners, you know, you want to check your lug nuts periodically. And if you've had a wheel off, after about 30 miles of driving or a week, come back, and you can do it with the weight of the car on there. Just come back and do a check of the torque setting at 95. Just do the circle to check that each lug is tight again. And I mean, you'll be surprised. Sometimes the lugs have loosened up slightly, so it's definitely one of those things you want to stay on top of. You know, I mean, I'm always removing the wheels on this car, so I mean, I have to really stay on top of that. But I mean, it's just a good practice to get into. But I mean, it's definitely important to have a torque wrench and torque them on there properly, because like I said, that you don't want to stretch that stud out. You know, last thing you want is to be, you know, cruising down the road and have a wheel come off. It's pretty not cool. Alright, so that's pretty much that. I'm going to get this thing down on the ground, probably take it for a little test ride. See how it is with the new gear oil in there. When you get done using your torque wrench, set it down to the lowest setting. So don't leave this thing at 95 foot-pounds. It's gonna put stress on the spring inside of this torque wrench. So anytime you're done using this thing, make sure you set it to the lowest setting. And then the other thing is with this pump, you know, these tubes just push in here, and when you want to take the tube off of there, you got to compress this, that little collar, and then the holes will just wiggle out of there. Alright, got done with the test drive. Everything seems like it's cool. It actually seems like it's a little bit easier to get the car rolling. I don't know if that's just a placebo effect, but I don't know. It seems like changing the fluid did make a difference. So the other thing I wanted to mention, you know, if you decide you're going to do this and you want to take the rear cover off, your first order of business is get that fill plug popped out. Because sometimes that thing can be really difficult to get out of there. And I think it's got red Loctite on it from the factory, so if it's never been out of there, it's going to be a battle to get that thing out of there. So keep that in mind. Like I said, if you're going to pop that cover off, be sure that plug comes out before you do anything. So yeah, no, I think it made a difference, because I think the last time the fluid got changed in that rear end was probably like 2001. I bought a 373 gear for the car, and I took it to a shop to have it installed, and the guy, you know, popped the cover off and took a look at the rear end, and he was saying that the carrier was pretty beat up, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, I started racing the car in SCCA like 1999, so 99, 2000, 01, you know, the car got beat up. And SCCA really, it can kick a car's ass, that's for sure. So you figure from 01 till 2019, I mean, you know, getting close to 20 years on the same rear axle fluid, so it was well overdue. I think you're supposed to change it out like every 30,000 miles, and I can't remember, 30 or 36 months, something like that. So it's just one of those general maintenance things. You know, same thing with the transmission, whether you got an automatic or the 5-speed. You know, I was pretty adamant about changing the fluid in the T5 when I was racing the car. Like, I did a lot of fluid change, and I don't know, maybe that's the only reason that T5 is still, I don't know, partially functioning. I don't think any T5 really shifts well, but considering what this car's been through and hasn't blown the tranny yet, it's actually kind of shocking. So maybe there's something to staying on top of changing the fluid. So anyways, and like I said before, I'm gonna have to go back and check the torque on that wheel. I mean, I'll probably check all of them, just go around the whole car, probably do that in a couple days, let everything settle down, double check that. But yeah, it seems like it worked out pretty good. And then everything I've been looking at says to use the friction modifier. Even if it says on the bottle, like I was saying earlier, you know, some of the bottles will actually say on there you don't need a friction modifier, so I don't know. It's probably worth it just picking up the friction modifier and being done with it. Even though I've read a lot of stuff that said if it says on the bottle it has it in there, you don't need it. I guess that's just a choice you have to make on your own. But to me, you're probably just better off getting the friction modifier and throw it in there. It's not really a big deal. Alright guys, I hope this video helped you out. You know, take it into consideration. If you haven't changed the fluid in your rear end, it's probably something you should think about doing. And like I said, that pump, it just worked out really well. Like, I was kind of shocked how easy it was. To me, that's a lot easier than popping the rear cover off, but you know, there's advantages to taking the rear cover off. You can really do a thorough inspection and all that, but I just didn't really want to get into messing with that, so thought, well, I'll try this pump out. And I'm pretty happy with the results. It worked out really well. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.